Hey everyone, welcome in. Today's the first show that we've done that's live in about 3 weeks. So thank you for everyone that's watching. If you got any comments, any stories you want to talk about, put them in the chat and I'll be sure to get to those at some point during the broadcast. But I'm going to go ahead and start with the big story of the week, the Oscars. Okay, so give me in the chat your response to how the Oscars were, the nominations. It seems like everyone says the biggest snub essentially was Villeneuve not getting Best Director for Dune. One thing that I was kind of more interested in going in to see these nominations were how stacked it was going to be in the favor of the audience. Okay, and I guess to kind of start, yeah, Fuzz Aldrin got a little bit of this because he was watching whenever I did the live reaction. But essentially, kind of what I've been thinking about the last few months when it comes to the Oscars or the award shows, even in the last few days, what exactly is the point of it? I've always thought of it kind of as like a litmus test to see the interest between the entertainment industry and the audience. We've got the Super Bowl coming up this weekend. There's probably going to be something like 155 million people watching the Super Bowl. It's a huge amount of interest between the audience and sports. It's kind of integral to it's integral to America, and the more people that actually watch the biggest event of that industry, you can tell how many people are actually invested in that industry. In particular, there you have sports. So essentially, I think that there are a few ways that you could think about the Oscars, kind of how it started. It started the way every award show for everything did, and Seth Rogen made a good point this week talking about this type of thing. It just started out people in the industry were giving their peers a pat on the back, like everything does. And that's perfectly fine. Started out in the Beverly Hotel in Los Angeles, then it grew. They started putting it on TV, and people loved it. Like it has been 70 years. You've got around on a bad year 40 million people. On a good year, you've got 55, 57 million people watching the Oscars. So you can't turn your nose up at the fact that, look, the Super Bowl, that is a gargantuan audience that watches. And obviously, if you've got two people watching the Super Bowl, you've got more than half America watching that event. There was a time where over 55 million Americans, 55 million TV sets were tuned in. You've got maybe at least two people each watching. That's over 100 million people every year watching the Oscars. Okay, that is not nothing. And so for a while, obviously, yes, it gains in popularity. The audience comes along and they stick side by side for a very, very long time. It becomes a celebration of movies. It's an awesome thing. And then we see in the last 15 years, we've had a drop off. We've had a massive drop off. And yes, I know there's been a massive drop off in award shows in general, but I don't think that just because you see failure all over the place, it means that you have to accept failure as being, deserved or where everything is meant to go. I think that the big problem is that there have been people will say that people don't care about the Oscars. People will say that they don't nominate enough popular stuff. I think what's going on, if you have 9 years of giving the best picture winner, that's the big award, the best picture award to movies that the majority of people go, I haven't seen that. I haven't heard of that. Or I have heard of that and I would like to see it, but it hasn't even come to my town yet. Then the next year, you're going to have a drop off. You're going to have a drop off every single year. And if 3 years of that happens, you have a bit of a drop off. The movie becomes even more obscure. Those people that left, they're not going to come back. They're not going to come back. Look, I love Parasite, and that's the type of movie that speaks to me, but that's a niche audience. You can't turn your nose up at 35% of your audience that isn't going to want to watch a movie with subtitles. And when they see that that's what wins, they're not going to come back the next year. Then you have something like Nomadland. And I think that the numbers that we see from this year are going to be a reflection of how well or poorly it did terribly last year. The awards from the previous year are going to be. So watching these Oscar nominations come through, what I was really wanting to see is, are they going to go the route of nominating things like Spider-Man, which I think after the last 2 years the entertainment industry has had, it deserves a place at the table because of the amount of money it generated, because of the audience that was brought in by it, by the way that the story reached across generations. And then nothing. Spider-Man didn't get any nomination at all. The closest we have is Dune. That's why I'm really hoping that Dune makes strides when it comes to getting the big award. I really wanted to win Best Picture because at that point, I know people who have not been into movies for the last few years who saw Dune and were like, geez, that's the most excited I've been since Lord of the Rings. And that means something for the entertainment industry to recognize that. I think could usher some people back in. What I'm worried about is that this is going to go much more in a Drive My Car direction, which again, I've seen Drive My Car. I like that movie. If I'm making a top 10 list, I am putting Drive My Car very high above Spider-Man. But again, I don't think the Academy Awards, after 70, 80 years of being in the limelight, is something that is just for a small niche group. It's for a large group of people. Giving it to something like Drive My Car, I think at that point, if they give it to Drive My Car, I think I'm considering whether or not I should watch it this year. If they give it to Drive My Car, I'm just not going to walk away. That's just not what it's meant for. It's just not what it's meant for. I mean, there's been a story in the last a few months ago. The Academy Awards actually gave ABC money, the network, $12 million back from their contract because the Oscars just don't have the value that they used to. And I think that's a real shame. I feel like it would be good if we could get back to a place where the entertainment industry and the audience is able to be back at the table together, respecting one another. And I know that just because if the Oscars were to give Dune or Spider-Man an Oscar, that doesn't fix everything. But I think that's a step in the right direction. I think that would really be a step in the right direction. That's all I have to say really about the thought of the Academy Awards. It feels like Hollywood has a real, just their nose turned up in the audience. And it feels inappropriate. The Denise snub, that just feels stupid. Like to a large degree, it feels like these people are just, even within their own industry, how do you nominate Dune for 10 awards and you don't give it to the director? Like even from within, there's so many people that are pissed off about that. And it makes sense. Even some of the actors came out in response to being pissed off about that. It makes a lot of sense. There's just a 10-year. It feels like the industry has such a 10-year in a lot of ways. I was happy to see Dune be nominated. And I was happy to see that there are good movies up there. Nightmare Alley, I thought was a very positive pick. I don't just want to be negative on the Oscars. I thought Nightmare Alley was a great, great movie. I saw it multiple times. If that were to win, then I would at least feel like they're looking at good storytelling, but I would still be disappointed because I would like to see the Academy do something that kind of reaches an olive branch back out to the audience. Some of the comments, Fuzz Aldrin says the Oscars are irrelevant. And hey, I feel like they're becoming more and more irrelevant each and every year, the more that they push into this territory. Homemade best movie lists are better than the Oscars. Yeah, I would trust someone who hardly watches that many movies, maybe watches a movie a month, and then give me their top 3 movies of the year. I agree with that. Dune is the people's champion. It's the first movie that I can remember. Tell me if I'm wrong. I think it is the first movie in a very long time to reach people's imaginations and just kind of get people excited about a big story, like big blockbuster storytelling. I don't think blockbuster should be a bad word, and I think Dune kind of reminded people of how good it can actually be. Tiffany Owen says, I prefer seeing who wins for best sound, best costuming, and so on. I to a lot of degrees agree with that. I was when watching the nominations and they had things like No Time to Die, Spider-Man, even last year whenever Tenet went up for a bunch of technical awards, it does seem like the movies that push more into even the technical categories, they normally are a bit more ambitious than the ones that just go for the niche art house fare. Then also Tiffany Owen says they became so extremely arrogant. Movies win that aren't box office hits. Does the Academy snub fun movies? I thought Jimmy Kimmel made a good point about why do they have to be serious? I don't think they have to be serious. I on Twitter, I put just a bunch every time the Oscars come out. I just kind of spam my Twitter account with a bunch of stuff. And the most people that were responding were kind of like, hey, Spider-Man was fun, but you know what? Don't Look Up is actually saying something. It's like, I don't even know, where did that even come from? The idea that the movie has to be saying something in order to be nominated for, like, what's the point of that? That makes no sense if that's the actual bar for what gets something into the Oscars, because there's so much boring stuff that just talks out of its ass in terms of what it's trying to say. I don't like why people say, oh, should we just look at the box office to see if a movie should be nominated? Because the box office, first of all, equals the actual audience. So if you're not taking into account the things people are actually watching, I'm not quite sure that point, the point saying we shouldn't look at the box office makes it seem like this story is going to end up being that for a long time, Hollywood and the audience aligned when it came to celebrating movies. And then whenever streaming came around, when things became more democratized, people were able to make their own choices. So they veered right. And then Hollywood made their own choices, so they veered very left. And I think that might just be the way that it ends up going. I hope it isn't. I really hope that it isn't, but it might just be the way that it's going. Okay, moving on from the Oscars, Village Roadhouse is suing Warner Brothers for snubbing them, their own snubbing essentially for the Matrix Resurrections movie. So essentially, so Village Roadhouse, they're the ones that they're producing the movie, they're putting it together, they're filming it, they're editing it, they're hiring their own people to actually make the movie. Warner Brothers, they kind of own the property and they're pushing it out. So they're the distributors really. So essentially what Village Roadhouse is saying is that Warner Brothers sabotaged the theatrical release of Matrix Resurrections so that Warner Brothers could instead push everyone towards HBO Max and boost their subscriber numbers. Because this was around the time everyone was still at home, movie theaters were not doing well, and HBO Max was really doing the day and day release thing. And this kind of reminded me, I'll keep you updated as to how this goes if it gets any more interesting than this. The thing that interested me about this, there was an antitrust law a few years back where essentially what the government said, like back in the 40s, was if you're Warner Brothers, if you're Sony, if you're Paramount, you're not allowed to own a theater. And because then you're just going to end up showing your own movies in the theater. Disney is just going to show its own movies in their own theaters. Warner Brothers are just going to show their own movies in their own theaters. And those laws actually ended they kind of rescinded those laws something like 2 years ago, I believe. And a bunch of people were freaking out. They were pretty much saying, are we going to go back to a model where each studio just kind of promotes their own movies in their own theaters and they shut out everything that's much smaller? And Netflix owns theaters now. Sony, I don't think Sony owns any theater, but the streamers are pushing more for having their own theaters. And this kind of reminded me of it because I'm wondering if there's going to be more of a war between studios that have streaming services and then the actual production companies. Like we've seen a lot of lawsuits recently around like Scarlett Johansson. We've got a lawsuit like this. We've got a lot of creatives like Warner Brothers pissed off Christopher Nolan so much that he broke off their 20-year relationship to go to a totally different studio. You had the director of Wonder Woman. You had a bunch of people on the Matrix production crew that were saying people had to be talked off the ledge of no longer working with Warner Brothers because of this. So this seemed, I don't know if this type of thing is going to continue happening. I know that the day and day release thing was very controversial, and this is very much tied to that. But I thought it was interesting because I feel like this could be the type of story that continues to develop. Like where do the rights start and stop when it comes to how much studios can pretty much take all of the pie for themselves? That was something that I found interesting. Also, Tiffany Owens says, yes, there's a balance between the art and the monetary value. I don't think at any point anyone in the Oscars should ever only look at if a movie is making money to decide if it should get an Oscar. They were talking a few years about the popular category, and I think it's even a more condescending idea. But I do think that if you're not taking the audience into account in terms of what they're actually watching, then you are literally disconnected from your audience. Okay, and another story that happened this week, this one a little sad. Doug Trumbull passed away. If you don't know who Doug Trumbull is, he directed a movie called Silent Running back in the day. He also was really a pioneer whenever it came to visual effects, like working with chemical visual effects. And he worked on things like 2001, Blade Runner, Tree of Life, and those movies. He passed away. He passed away this last week. Very, very sad. He only recently was at the Museum of the Moving Image doing a presentation about 2001: A Space Odyssey. And from what I heard from people that went to that, it sounded like he was very with it. Like he was not kind of, losing his step. It was sad to see the news of him going. I loved 2001. That is one of my absolute favorite movies. Fuzz Aldrin says Tree of Life shook me to my core. I love it. Tree of Life was actually the movie that got me really interested in how movies were made. The scene wherever I saw that in the theaters, whenever the creation of the universe, that sequence, that was the moment that I remember being kind of like, what in the hell? Like, what is this? How in the world does something like this happen? I remember waiting for it to come out on DVD so I could get it on Blu-ray, watch all the behind the scenes stuff, just kind of looked up. And that's kind of what I got interested in 2001 then. So that was a very sad story to see him pass away. In fact, I forget the name of the book now. It's by Michael Benson about the making of 2001. Great book. fantastic book. Goes really, really behind the scenes by actually interviewing a lot of the crew members, giving a ton of stories about Kubrick's process, making him kind of seem more like an actual person than kind of like the mythic figure that he's talked about, the recluse figure that he's talked about. But Doug Trumbull is interviewed so much in that book, and he gives a ton of incredible background of how you actually had to get things done on the set of 2001. He talks about the process of him discovering how to get those effects done for 2001, the experimentation that had to happen, the amount of failure that had to happen. So that's a great book. Again, I'm forgetting the name of that book, but it's by Michael Benson about 2001: A Space Odyssey. Again, just very sad to lose Doug Trumbull. He really was a pioneer when it came to being a filmmaker. And also check out Silent Running. That's a really fun. That's a fun movie, like a gem from the, I think, 70s. And yeah, definitely give that a watch. And I forget the actor's name in that too. Bruce Dern. That's right, Bruce Dern. Fuzz Aldrin says The Tree of Life, it's not for everyone, but the film felt like an autobiography. I really think. Oh, it felt like an autobiography. You're saying of his life. I've been in Texas a little bit. I know quite a few people from Texas. That movie takes place in Texas, and it does definitely have that Texas feel, that kind of country feel. And the way that it works with memory is really spectacular. That the Tree of Life, if you're interested in movies that are a little bit more experimental, then I would say definitely go for that one. That was nominated back for Best Picture like in 2011, and that was back whenever the Academy Awards, every now and then they dabble in an experimental movie, but if Tree of Life came out today, that thing would probably win Best Movie, and that probably would not be the best thing. But that's a great movie. Watch Tree of Life. Very sad this week to see Doug Trumbull pass away. Okay, next story. Mission Impossible 8, it seems, is going to be Tom Cruise's send-off. I really like Mission Impossible. Mission Impossible is a very weird franchise. It feels like it is of the James Bond ilk, the spy genre with kind of the classic type of action. But Tom Cruise does a very good job of pushing the Mission Impossible franchise into being modern, into having a bit. It has a bit of modernity about it in the fact that the character is more of a romantic character, and that is okay. Also, the fact that the whole movie does have the episodic feeling, but it does also have a bit of a through line going through it. So it kind of roots it more in modern day storytelling, but having the classic feeling of kind of the episodic spy. And I've always loved the Mission Impossible series. I feel like it's a really, really good time. One story actually that came out about the last Mission, or the Mission Impossible movie they're making right now, the COVID restrictions blew up the budget to like $300 million. So I don't know if that has something to do with it, but I am very happy to hear that Tom Cruise is kind of deciding that there's going to be a culmination of the series. There's going to be an end point to it, especially on the heels of something like No Time to Die. I do kind of wonder if that also influence the decision if someone else is going to take over the mantle when it goes, and this will be more of a James Bond series. I'm not sure, but I'm really encouraged about the fact that they are deciding to end the series, especially after there's been so many successful Mission Impossible movies. It felt for a little while there, every now and then a Mission Impossible movie was good, then it was okay, then it was great, then it was okay again. But the last like 4 movies have been solid. They've been pretty, well, maybe more like 3 movies. The last 3 movies have been very, since Ghost Protocol, I feel like we've gotten very solid and dependable Tom Cruise action movies out of the Mission Impossible movies. So I'm really happy to hear that they've decided to end it. Good on Tom Cruise. Tom Cruise, who is 59, which I guess will finish off Mission Impossible when he's 61. Incredible that he's still doing all that work. But he's not slowing down. We still have the space movie to look forward to. We still have the Edge of Tomorrow sequel to look forward to. So he's definitely not going anywhere, but he will be leaving Mission Impossible. Do you think they're going to actually fill that role? And that kind of also made me think, like, who is an actor that's out there right now that if we lost Tom Cruise, who would be able to take up that mantle of someone who is really nothing but a dependable action star? Not one of these, not like a Chris Hemsworth, where like his character, like his persona doesn't really define each and every role. Tom Cruise, I feel his presence defines each and every character, and in a way keeps them the same because they're all Tom Cruise, but it does not, but it's still able to be fluid and adaptable. Bautista, that's a good point. He could probably do that. No, he did that in, well, he's wholly his own, obviously, in Guardians of the Galaxy, But these bit parts that he has, it seems like when you get him in Blade Runner, he's got his own personality. We're doing road construction outside now, so I apologize if it seems like there's noise coming from out there. Lakeland titles, it seems like a lot of money to leave on the table just to end it. I do think it does seem like a lot of money to leave on the table, but I do feel like if you're someone like Tom Cruise, you're probably really trying to protect your legacy. You really want to protect your image. You want it to be solid. And he's gotten like the last 3 movies have been received so well from the audience and from critics that I feel like you don't want to chance it. They might feel like throughout COVID, they've gotten a good amount of time to really perfect these movies. And he might feel like, look, I'm going to finish this. I'm going to go on and do my space movie. I'm going to do Edge of Tomorrow. I'm going to keep making money. And yeah, like Tiffany Owen says, yes, they'll keep Mission Impossible going. Someone like Tom Cruise, he might stay on as a producer and he might say, I'm going to look after this franchise from a production role, get a really nice check, make sure we get good directors, and we're going to bring on a new star, and he wants to be in charge of that new star. I think that could probably be, even from a business perspective, a smart move for Tom Cruise. How much do you want to bet Tom Holland will replace Tom Cruise? I have a list of people. I put Tom Holland, Lucas Hedges, and Will Porter. Those are the 3 that I had in mind. And I feel like the gulf between Tom Holland and the rest of those guys is pretty big. So if I had to guess, I would probably go Tom Holland. Not because he himself is actually, I feel right now at that point, but if he continues in this Spider-Man role, maybe he just got such a baby face. Maybe if he continues in the Spider-Man role, does a good job with that, maybe he'll actually be able to maybe grow up a little bit whenever it comes to getting like an action movie wherever he's carrying on his own. Like this Uncharted movie's coming out, and it just looks like a 12-year-old kid running through the jungle. He could do it. He really could do it, but he's got to get out of that high school phase. But honestly, I'm kind of seeing that he might be the one that's kind of at the top of the list. Chris Pratt. Chris Pratt's really good. He changes. He does change through so many different roles. I'm excited to see this new Jurassic World, or is it Jurassic Dominion? I feel like he could be someone that also has that same type of a role. The thing with Chris Pratt, though, is, and I feel like it's totally unfair for him, he gets put in so much controversial backlash on social media. And he doesn't really make comments. People just seem to hate on him. They love to hate on him. And I would say that is a thing someone like Tom Cruise would need. And that'd probably be why someone like a Tom Holland could do it very well. You got to stay out of the controversy. Tom Cruise does a really good job at staying out of the controversy. I mean, the man is actually, he's in Scientology. So he's still bankable, even though he's in a pretty controversial group. He does a good job of staying out of the controversy. I feel like that's a prerequisite for whoever takes up the mantelpiece for the next Tom Cruise. This one, not so much. This one's got a strong connection to movies, so I want to bring it up, but technically it's a TV show. So we got the first images of the Lord of the Rings of Power movie. So this one, it's been, I think there's been a lot of hype. There's also been a good bit of, that's the thing, not a good bit of controversy. For the next Lord of the Rings show, I'll say personally, I'm very excited. I just went through the extended editions and I got very pumped for this newest show, more so than I thought I was going to be. So I think in one way, there's a gulf between Hollywood and the audience that we talked about in the awards segment of the show. And so right now, Hollywood, I think, is really pushing the tent poles. Star Wars, I think, always attracts the Star Wars crowd. I feel like they've just about wrung as much content, as many new subscribers they're going to get from Star Wars. But I think this show, Rings of Power, is going to be very interesting to see how many people gravitate towards Amazon. If this is over $1 billion investment that Jeff Bezos and company are making, how many people is it going to pull towards Amazon? 2 things really with that. Like, is the point of it to gain an audience? I'm kind of questioning that because Amazon did boost their pricing for Amazon Prime. That could be a fear that they don't quite know if this is going to be successful, so they want to make the money up. Or it might just be, let's try and make as much money up as possible. Or kind of like, we know we're going to get a new audience, so we might as well raise the price early so that when we get these new people, they have to pay the money. We know that they have to pay the money. Or on the other end, I guess that was the other end. They're expecting that they're going to get a big audience, and they're upping the price because they know that whenever the audience shows up, it's actually going to be worth it. I think that this probably is going to pay off. The amount of money, the amount of time. My favorite story for this, and this was like 3 years ago. The story came out when they were writing Lord of the Rings. That first of all points to the amount of time they've been taking. When they were writing Lord of the Rings, the way that they would do it, the writers were not able. They wouldn't meet remotely. They wouldn't meet at a coffee shop. They wouldn't meet at just a regular office space. Amazon had just kind of one of their headquarters where they would meet, and the writers would have to thumb press in order to get in, to be verified, and then get into the writer's room. And the writer's room would be guarded the entire time by just bodyguards, so that nobody could get in, so that they could have like another way to verify that everyone that's coming in is everyone that's supposed to be here. We're going to guard you. I just thought that was wild. But that level of commitment, that level of time, maybe it's unethical, but in terms of building something, you're going to build something, I would think, that's, reputable if you're putting that much attention, that many resources on it. So I think that it's a good thing to be pumped. I think it's a good thing to be hyped. The images that came out looks like they're doing a very good job right now with I won't say with the story, with the quality of the production. I'm excited about that. One thing that kind of made me a little wary about this is that there have been a lot of articles coming out from places like Variety, Hollywood Reporter, Deadline, saying that there's a lot of backlash over the concerns about diversity, which I kind of feel like there is a little bit of a grift whenever it comes to the Hollywood publications that are talking about backlash from diversity. Because they had, African American, they had Asian, they had white characters in the stills. So all of these publications that are saying essentially people are upset that the story is going to be diverse. And I feel like when I've gone online, at least, I have not seen that. I haven't seen, every now and then, but come on, like, you could write a bad article for people saying that they're upset that Lord of the Rings is going to be in color instead of black and white. Like, you could find people being upset about anything. But online, I have not seen a negative response to the casting of this. Like I said, every now and then, but it's the same level of you seeing someone being upset about anything. So I'd be interested in seeing if that continues, that if that grows. As of right now, I really don't like the trend that seems to happen in Hollywood publications, is that they kind of like to pump up a bunch of hysteria over something like diversity. It seems like a grift. It seems a little unconscionable. And it just seems icky. Like, just don't do that. Just don't do that. But that being said, everyone that I've talked to is pumped for Lord of the Rings. I'm pumped for this Lord of the Rings show. Let me know y'all's thoughts. Are you pumped for this? Are you into Lord of the Rings? Is this something that you're going to be watching, or, watch it later? Who knows? Fuzz Aldrin also says that Jamie Dornan could be the next Tom Cruise. That he does kind of have the look. He's got the look that you would kind of want from a Tom Holland whenever they actually are grown up. Jamie Dornan is incredible. I think I'm not wrong in saying Jamie Dornan is the one in the what is it? Tom and Pam and Tommy, whatever show that is on Hulu about Pamela Anderson. I think that's him. He's a very versatile actor. He's done interviews where he talks about that he wants to constantly be doing radically new things and not be kind of stuck as the 50 Shades of Grey guy or the artsy Belfast guy. He was in Barb and Star, Go to Vista Del Mar, which I have a review of on the channel. That's a fantastic movie, and he's hilarious in that. I love that he does seem to be like an actor who is very much wanting to be very versatile. And I would really like if he pushes into an action role, I feel like he could probably do a good job with that. Fuzz Aldrin also says, I hate Foundation and Wheel of Time. Is Lord of the Rings going to be any different? Foundation, that's Apple TV. I kind of am a little tempted by the trailers to check it out, but now I probably won't because you said that. Wheel of Time, the trailer of that one just looks so... Wheel of Time looks like it is trying to be Game of Thrones so much. And I even heard Jeff Bezos... All right, that was probably just a rumor. Jeff Bezos saying that he wants their own version of Game of Thrones. So they pushed for something like Wheel of Time. I don't know if something like Wheel of Time was something where it's just like, we're just going to do it, see, like data. I feel like a lot of these shows that a lot of these streamers are doing is kind of like flooding their streaming services with a bunch of different type of genres to see where their audience lives so that they can then use that data to then create new and original things. I mean, those algorithms, that's what hearing how Netflix has such deep data on their algorithms they say that over at Netflix, it took them like 10 years to build their algorithm. But essentially, they've been able to tell their directors, their writers, that after you've edited your show and they submit the first draft, they're literally able to tell you, look, we love the show, but between the 20 and 45th minute of episode 2, if we don't tighten that up, we are going to lose so many subscribers. And it's not necessarily saying that it's good or bad, but Netflix is pretty much able to say, we can tell you how to edit your show so that people watch from the beginning to the end. And that's kind of why with something like Ozark, I can't tell if it's good or if it's just very good at keeping me watching it. And I feel like there's a difference there. And I feel like with shows like Wheel of Time, Foundation, although Lakeland Title says Foundation is good but slow, so now I might actually check it out. I probably will check it out. I do kind of wonder how much of this is kind of like checking the pulse of the audience. Do you like this? Are you responding to this? Are you, oh, they hated Foundation and it dipped like 50% in the middle of the season, so there's something that, just collecting data. I do kind of wonder how much of what they put out is just collecting data. I kind of feel like Lord of the Rings has to be different, though. You have to realize that by putting the amount of money and the amount of time, the amount of publicity, you are going to get a ton of eyeballs. That can't be a data collection thing. That has to be, we need to land this plane so majestically that by the time the show is over, everyone that's paying $15 for Prime is going to continue doing it for the next year so that we're able to get the next season of Lord of the Rings to get the same level of people. Like, I think for their own sake, it's got to be traditionally good. And that's why I'm not concerned about when people, because there are people that say it, that they're saying, there are people commenting on these videos saying they're concerned about the wokeness of the Lord of the Rings series. I'm not worried about that. I'm really not worried about that. Amazon is smart when it comes to business, and they're obviously going to be smart whenever it comes to their entertainment. And I really think that if they're going to do the smart thing, they're going to do this a traditionally well-told story, and it's probably not going to be, a message-laden story. So I'm not really worried about that. Fuzz Aldrin says Foundation made me want to draw mustaches and booger on Isaac Asimov photos. Okay, well, again, I'll see how it is, and but I'll let you guys know. I'll let you guys know sincerely. Okay, this is gonna be the last story, and I found that. Okay, start off. Did you use MoviePass back whenever MoviePass was coming out? 2014, 2015. Were you aware of it? Did you use it? For those that were not aware of what it was, MoviePass was a way where you pay $10 a month. It's about $10 a month, and then you get to watch as many movies as you want. There was a day where I went and saw 3 movies at the theater. I think it might have been like the second time that I went to use it. I saw 3 movies at the theater with a friend just because it was like, this can't be real. Like, you start at 10 a.m., you're done at 7, you just for free, essentially. Fuzz Aldrin, yes, I use MoviePass and Cinema. Exactly. That was the exact same type of thing. And everyone that used it and loved it, everyone that was skeptical of it, I hated the people that were skeptical of it because they were like, oh, there's no way that thing's going to last. And the rest of us were like, yeah, there is no way this thing is going to last. So maybe pay $10 and get as many movies in as you can for free before this thing, kicks off. Because there's no way that something where you pay $10 a month and then that's it. That's all you get to watch. And they were saying that they were making their money by giving data out to a lot of other companies as to what people were watching. The problem was that because so many people were able to watch movies for basically nothing, people would take chances and go watch everything. And they didn't actually get any real data as to how people were enjoying their movies. So the data wasn't even very useful. And so obviously they went away. They've, filed for bankruptcy, and now they're gone, or they were gone. And they announced now they're coming back this summer. They're going to be back. So pretty exciting. I was excited when I saw the headline to see that was going to happen. But they've now said that they're going to change up. You don't actually have to pay anything this time around. This time, all you have to do is you have to watch a few advertisements to earn credit, and then you can spend that credit to go and watch whatever movies you want to watch, essentially for free, not having to pay any money. And the way that they'll make sure that you're going to be watching the ads and not just pressing play and then putting your phone down for 45 minutes is that your phone is actually going to scan your eyeballs. This is not a joke. They're actually going to scan your eyeballs. And if you are watching if you're watching the ads the entire time, then you'll be able to get your credit. And then once you have your credit, you can go watch your movies. So MoviePass started off being a little bit of a way for, you know, the average person being able to kind of get back at the theater by saying, we don't have to pay you a bunch of money. And now it seems like MoviePass, which had a problem with collecting data, and that's what killed it, is now going to be collecting a terrifying amount of data, and then they'll be sending that off to God knows who where, and then we get a little bit of credit, and then we get to go and watch a movie for free. So I personally am not going to be trying this out. I love MoviePass for what they forced on the theater industry. I now have an AMC Stubs card, paid $24 a month. I can go and watch 3 IMAX movies a week for, 12 IMAX movies. Is that right? Yeah, of course that's right. 12 IMAX movies a month for $24, I think is a pretty damn good deal. So no, I don't need MoviePass. I really hope that other people don't go for this. Look, if you're going to go for it, I don't judge you, but there's something about an app scanning. I know that they're probably doing this anyway, but something where you actually are given literal credit to go and do something because something is scanning your eyes feels a little bit too much like a cartoon. So I would rather that not happen. I'm not going to go for it. If you try it out, let me know how it is. A few other comments. Lakeland Title says, I didn't, but my friend used it all the time until, of course, it got awful. It did get bad. I remember the moment that it went, at least the moment I realized it went bad. A friend and I went to go and see Justice League, actually in Baton Rouge at the AMC over near O'Neill. And us and a group of other people were just like, not a group, it was packed outside the theater. Everybody was just clicking, turning their phones off. Everyone was on Twitter. Everyone in the group was on Twitter. Everyone was talking to each other, seeing like what's going on, what's going wrong. We all realized we're all there for the same reason. We're trying to get a free movie, but it's not working. And everyone trying to get MoviePass on the phone. Everyone realizing there is no customer service for this. Seeing everyone else in the country is going through the same thing. And yeah, it pretty much died. I knew one friend who actually was not able to cancel her MoviePass subscription. So her annual subscription is not great. MoviePass made movie theaters change their ticketing policies, and I am happy that it did that. It did a good thing, and it's starting to seem like if MoviePass does a good job with this next iteration, it's going to change a lot of other policies. So hopefully that does not happen. Thank you, everyone that has been watching. Submit any other stories that you want to see. You can follow 5 Minute Critic at number 5 Min Critic on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and thank you, everyone that subscribes. And if you haven't, please subscribe to 5 Minute Critic for future updates on reviews and movie news.